These are the 6 common sources of our UU faith, taken nearly word for word from the UUA website. 1. Direct experience of that transcending mystery and wonder affirmed in all cultures, which moves us to a renewal of the spirit and an openness to the forces which create and uphold life. 2. Words and deeds of prophetic people, which challenge us to confront powers and structures of evil with justice, compassion, and the transforming power of love. 3. Wisdom from the world's religions, which inspires us in our ethical and spiritual life. 4. Jewish and Christian teachings, which call us to respond to God's love by loving our neighbors as ourselves. 5. Humanist teachings, which counsel us to heed the guidance of reason and the results of science and warn us against idolatries of the mind and spirit. 6. Spiritual teachings of earth-centered traditions, which celebrate the sacred circle of life and instruct us to live in harmony with the rhythms of nature. Of all these sources, the one that I keep coming back to is the first, direct experience of transcending mystery and wonder, which moves us to a renewal of the spirit and an openness to the forces which create and uphold life. As an inexperienced and relatively innocent 16-year-old, I'm still in the midst of figuring out what it actually means to have faith in something. But despite all that, I'm still unclear about in my own mind. The first source gets to the core of what I think faith could be all about. Essentially, the first source leads back to an acknowledgement that for Unitarian Universalists, our greatest source of faith is all life, with which we interact, from which we learn, and whose wisdom we trust. I have this theory that perhaps faith is grounded in being in relationship, that faith comes out of and sustains the connection of relationship, whether you are connecting to a community who inspire faith in the goodness of people, or to a tree that inspires faith in the ways of nature, or to the distant stars that inspire faith in the vastness and interconnectedness of all things. A very powerful experience of being in relationship happened to me a few months ago, at the end of the semester orchestra concert at my school. During our performance, I was connected to my instrument, the score I was playing from, the other violinists, our conductor, my friends in the audience, the strangers in the audience. It felt like I was connected to the whole world because that recital hall felt like the whole world. That experience gave me faith in my purpose as a musician and in the life I'm building. In those relatively few minutes, I got to connect to the world in the way that I've chosen for myself, and that gave me faith in myself and in my capabilities. However you find your faith, and wherever your faith lies, may you connect with it in this sacred space on this beautiful morning.
Yes. So the sources of our faith. This morning we have 4 personal reflections on what inspires, holds, and/or propels faith. As people, as journeyers on this place, on the path, and as Unitarian Universalists.
Good morning, my name is Beem. I was raised without a belief system, but as much knowledge of world religions as my father could cram into my head from a very young age. So I grew up knowing about that there was no one right way to think or one set of rules to follow, but I never really had a personal structure of my own. I can pinpoint the moment in my life where everything changed for me. I was 12 years old, sitting on my bed and reading a book. I hadn't really been interested in this book up to this point, and I'd kind of been forced into reading it by my family members. But then there was a moment in this book where a wall opened up and a young boy walked through into a whole world of magic. It took me many years to fully understand how Harry Potter not only changed my life, but shaped my life from that moment on. It sounds crazy, but everything about who I am today started in that moment, and I would not be the person I am today if it weren't for the Harry Potter series. To say that a series of children's books is my religion sounds a little silly, but if you could see the very real Harry Potter shrine in my bedroom that my brother can attest to, you would understand how serious I'm being. Those books didn't just give me characters to look up to and model myself after. I didn't simply learn the difference between good and evil, and it wasn't even that these books and films helped me to finally talk to people my own age. I learned how to be a person in those pages. As a depressed teenager, Harry Potter gave me a world filled with hope to cling to and reminded me that happiness can be found in the darkest of places if we only remember to turn on the light. A quote that is literally written on my light switch in my bedroom. J.K. Rowling took her own experiences with depression and gave me a physical monster, and then taught me how to banish it using happy memories. I learned that even the people that we think are the wisest make bad decisions, and that nobody isn't a flawed human being. I learned that while some people are just evil, a lot of the time there is a story behind it, and it's important for us to know why and to understand. And to judge a measure of the man by how he treats his inferiors and not his equals. I learned about equality and how to treat those that are different with the same amount of respect. I learned how to fight for justice and the difference between doing what is right and doing what is easy. I learned that no matter what I may think of myself, it is my choices and not my abilities that determine who I am as a person, and that it does not matter what a person is born to be, but what they grow to be. I learned about sorrow and how we must not sink beneath our anguish, but battle on, and how fear of a name increases fear of the thing itself. I learned about friendship and family and love, and how love binds us and protects us, how it lasts beyond death, and how it's the greatest weapon we have and the greatest form of magic that exists. It would not have been impossible for me to learn these things from other sources. Lao Tzu said that there are many paths to enlightenment, and this is the one that I chose. I understand that each person's path is different and important and equally valid, whether we enter that path in a church, on a mountaintop, through a movie, a book, or a TV show. But to me, I came to through my beliefs through a children's book. And to me, it's just another book filled with stories and ideas about how to be a good person.
Baby swap. Hi, I'm Tavis Beem. One of the first questions I asked my 5th grade class last year was, how are we going to get along? We will have conflicts, I tell them. We will disagree. What matters most is how we deal with the conflicts. We have the power to create, to design who we will be together. We must communicate our needs in a constructive way and listen to each other. One of the most powerful sources of faith for me comes from my relationships built with the people in my life, specifically how we deal with conflict. Conflict is a part of community, and it exposes my own areas for growth. The first principle of Unitarian Universalism calls for the inherent worth and dignity of every person. For me, this is one of the most challenging, and it is probably one of the most important. Inherent implies that this quality exists. It is innate and built in, as if the universe has bestowed it in each of us as factually as it has given us hearts and skin. This first principle requires for me faith, in the most common use of the word. It is strange for me to get up here and talk about faith. Philosophically, I'm a materialist. I don't see any scientific, rational justification for this principle. But I take it as a matter of faith, and faith gets tested. My faith is tested on a national level. I turn on the news and I see people who I wholly disagree with, and I feel anger. I see them make decisions and hurt people that I care about, and that anger turns to rage. And when I see supporters of these people, rage turns to my own natural proclivity to otherize, to turn these people into monsters, to see them as lesser humans. My faith is tested in the classroom when I am challenged by a student's behavior, and I begin to think of the student as a bad kid rather than a person in need or in pain. And my faith, our faith, is tested right here. We are building a community. We each come to this church for different reasons. We each have different causes that we want to champion. As a result, there is conflict. Some are here for a spiritual home. Others as a place for political or social reform. Maybe it's climate change, white supremacy, immigration. What we decide to do with these causes define what we are as an organization. But how we work out our internal conflicts defines who we are. It is my faith that tells me that what we are, the outcomes of these conflicts, matter less than who we are, how we go about resolving these conflicts. The first principle calls us to look past our tribalistic instincts, our proclivity to otherize people that are different or think differently, and a lived faith in this principle helps expose our own predispositions to do so. Now, one of the prophetic sources in my life, as my sister's was Harry Potter, mine was the 1990s television show Babylon 5. And the Babylon 5 shrine that I had in my room when I was a kid growing up, as my sister could attest to. But this quote eloquently summed it up for me. The universe speaks in many languages, but it is only one voice. It speaks in the language of hope. It speaks in the language of trust. It speaks in the language of strength and the language of compassion. It is the language of the heart and the language of the soul, but always it is the same voice. It is the voice of our ancestors speaking through us, and it is the voice of our inheritors waiting to be born. It is the small, still voice that says, "We are one." No matter the blood, no matter the skin, no matter the world, no matter the star, we are one. No matter the pain, no matter the darkness, no matter the loss, no matter the fear, we are one. Here, gathered together in common cause, we agree to recognize this singular truth and singular rule, that we must be kind to one another. Because each voice enriches us and ennobles us, and each voice lost diminishes us. We are the voice of the universe, the soul of creation, the fire that will light the way to a better future. We are one.
Good morning. My name's Ryan Lim. For most people, the getting to know UU exercises seemed easy. We were asked to split up into little groups based on our religious upbringing, but I froze. I didn't know quite where to stand. I'm a bit of a religious mess, you might say. I was raised by an excommunicated Mormon and a secular Jew. To make matters even more confusing, I attended a Christian school for most of my education. My parents never took me to church, but I had chapel on Fridays, and we celebrated secular Christian holidays on top of many Jewish ones. And my Mormon grandparents took me to church, the Jewish ones to temple. We even took the dogs to St. Francis's Blessing of the Saints, the Blessing of the Pets. And my mother often told me what she believed in was love. So where do I fit in? It's kind of funny when you think about it, because there's a more famous person, someone who else had a secular Jewish upbringing, attended a Christian school, and found his own source of faith. Einstein said, "My religion consists of a humble admiration of the illimitable superior spirit who reveals himself in the slight details we are able to perceive with our frail and feeble mind." Now, I wish I were that eloquent, that able to express what I feel inside. But my faith is in the patterns of the universe, the fact that we are a statistical probability, but the universe is not. Well, it is, but it isn't. Nothing is quite that simple. I met with a college counselor recently. I wanted to change my degree to math. And she asked me what my goal was with the degree, and I said, well, I want to get a master's in divinity. Why math, she asked. I shrugged and I told her, well, math is a major part of my spirituality. She gave me a look like she had never quite heard those words in that order and quickly changed the subject. So the sources of my spirituality. As a half-adopted child, the question of nature versus nurture came up a lot. Spoiler alert, it's both. I'm a pantheistic UU Jew informed by a mess of religious pedigree and the beauty of my environment, a universe where the math works and where we can work out the laws of nature and find God within. Thank you.
Good morning. For a long time, I wasn't sure if I had a faith. As a young child, my family didn't practice a specific faith tradition. My father was brought up Hindu, but raised to know about and respect many religions in his boarding school in India. My mother had origins in Mormonism that ended at 4 and then kind of continued on with Lutheran churches every summer with her grandma, so there was a little mix there. My parents didn't want to force one faith tradition on my sister and I, so in turn we were raised unchurched. Coming from a life of having no church, I took that to mean that I was not a person of faith for a very, very long time. However, as time passed and I came to this church, I began to reflect and think about where my sources of faith were. I came to realize that I had been wrong about thinking that I had no faith. Although my parents didn't raise me within a church, they had brought me up with a different type of faith. The faith that I had was in people. I believe so deeply and so purely in the strength and resilience of people, and I find solace in the fact that though there are bad people and maybe bad intentions sometimes, the good will always outweigh those negatives. There will always be people who stand up and work to be better and better themselves in their communities. So, when I became a UU, I felt that faith grow and magnify. It was as if the very thing that I had faith in was concentrated into one physical place, and I felt that my soul had this aha moment of, oh my gosh, I found my home, this is amazing. So when you find something like that, it's natural, for me, it was natural to think that it was perfect, to think that there were no flaws, but as many of you know, perfect is something that is perhaps unattainable. As I became more involved, it was easier to see certain shortcomings within our faith. Just as a child one day realizes that their parent is just another human, capable of mistakes and faults, I saw things that made me question whether or not this was the faith for me. These questions remained for a good amount of time, and I was very close to losing my faith in this living tradition that we share. But realizing that something I saw as flawless had flaws almost caused me to walk away. But I thought back to my first faith, the thing that I was raised with, and I remembered why I loved people. Because scars and wounds don't mean that people are weak. It means that they are strong, and it means that they are survivors. Just like people, this faith, Unitarian Universalism, has scars and wounds, and it is more beautiful for having them. Because perfection is impossible, and beauty is more than skin deep. Beauty is about the bones and the soul of a being, and about the principles and values. We have the opportunity to leave this faith better than we found it, an opportunity and responsibility to heal the wounds that divide us and create a religion and community that is built to last so that we can support generations to come. That hope and the work towards that future is what keeps my faith. Thank you.
As you have heard, we come together from many diverse spiritual paths, arriving here from places of spiritual traditions, lived experience, pop culture at times. And this, indeed, is part of the beauty of Unitarian Universalism as a living tradition. We are learning, we are growing, and we are evolving as people of faith. And we are held together, not by uniformity of creed. I would almost chuckle to think that everybody in this room actually believed the same thing. I've met enough of you and I know enough of you to know that that is probably not true. But instead, we are held together by covenant. Our desire to worship together, to seek justice together, to communicate together, and to hold each other together in beloved community. Blessed be.